Okay, we're gonna just go ahead and get into it. I mean, there's so much to say. So I feel like because there's so much to say that I could also really filter my own thoughts on too. I figured it might be best that I start with some oracles and then get into some more archetypal energy because it's crazy. So because I feel like the way that Spirit's putting it in my head right now is that there's like really such a plethora of messages available, and I guess I'll start with the Osho's Zen, but there's like this plethora of messages that are all kind of converging at this time, and so I don't know, I'm just interested to see. Yeah, I'm also like really paying attention to my perception of myself right now, like what I think I look like, and I don't know, it's like really important. Like I know I like fell off for a second, like you think I get what like YouTubers mean when they're like, "Did you miss me?" Like, sorry, like, and like nobody's watching this, but there's definitely a jump. And oh my god! So I just flipped the deck and I looked at it, and maybe I'll be able to see it because I know that I saw it. But this card, Adventure, at the bottom of the deck, I feel like just revealed itself again. So we're gonna go ahead and read it because I opened right to the page, bro. Okay, well, it's also 420, so anyways. So the commentary. When we are truly in a spirit of adventure, we are moving just like this child. Full of trust, out of the darkness of the forest into the rainbow of light, we go step by step, drawn by our sense of wonder into the unknown. Congratulations, collective. We made it. So like when you dip out of the simulation and you really start waking up, the waking up process is also followed by this like dark forest, which is like a purely strengthening experience. Like it's typically pretty painful. Like so that's why a lot of people like once you ascend, they don't really tell you about this in advance. So I'm telling you now because you're experiencing this now. But essentially, you now are going through this almost pitch black, thick forest like coarseness. Oh, I love that my dog's in here with me. Anyways, and she just like made herself known, which really just added to my experience. But no, seriously. So you've just made it out of this like this dark forest with hardly any sunlight that gets to it. Like it's that thick, it's that deep, and you were in the heart of it. And you go through this period right after the cycle completion, which is like a purely like strengthening and like bodybuilding kind of experience, you know? And then once you do that, you are learning and listening for your inner voice, and that inner voice like takes you down a certain trajectory, and there's only one, it's only out, like it's like the type of force where you just got to keep moving, and you will find your way out of it. And I feel like that's really really an emotion that I'm sitting with right now. Like how do you grapple with, or how did I, because I've already done it, right? How did I grapple with working so diligently to make my way through just the grasping waking up in general, to be met with more work, like probably the hardest part of it, like the hardest work was in this period of time that we're now coming out of, because we look, like they said, like this child. Like look how this child looks kind of drunk, like it's kind of like a daze, a sleepwalk. Like we've been in darkness so long that our senses are also like extremely sensitive. So like if you were in a dark forest without seeing sunlight for an extended period of time, and you were in isolation for an extended period of time, like strength building, like, I don't know, just getting like this sensation of like light, color, smell, touch, like everything getting really, really, really like, you're just extremely sensitive, and so it's almost kind of like, this is also like feeling like walking on a cloud, because your perception of space and time is now informed by like the absence of light, or just the presence of darkness, however you want to look at that. That's huge, right? I think a lot of us are asking ourselves that, like, was it that from my last experience, was there an absence of my light? Or is it the presence of darkness? Which one is it? And we're really gonna break that down, because what do you feel towards darkness? And I have to ask myself this right now, and I feel like the trees are supporting this education, because what do I really feel when I'm in the presence of my own darkness? And ultimately, which of those things, if any, are going to stop you? Right? You have to ask yourselves all these questions. I think when we talk about the human experience, we don't give ourselves any credit as the designers we are, regardless of, again, whatever polarity you might fall on. You know what I mean? Like, it's neither really here nor there. But I think at some point it becomes like, what makes rational sense to you? You know, you've been committed to this path of self-awareness being the only real objective. So life for you, from a design standpoint, is going to be assembling the components that you could potentially grow and learn from. There's a standard inherent in that, right? Like, what is your rubric for allowing something like that to kind of come into your life? I hate sneezing into my hair. I don't know why I just got a super like anti-bug, whatever. But what is that for yourself? I think that's what I would communicate back right now. You know, I think there are certain energies that are asking a lot of me, asking me to respond. And I feel like my question to you then would be, energy, what are we really here to do, you know? And I think this sense of adventure, and it's almost like arriving at adventure like hand delivered on a cloud, because I'm so interested in the perception of this like rich, deep forest that's really like condensed. And I got this imagery of like this house that exists, and it was really more so like an astral meetup, but it was showing itself like in a divination spread as this like house embedded in this woods. And here I am being reminded of this woods. And if you were to like make a 3D model of what I would say like the consciousness journey looked like, there would be this like patch in between that I would consider this forest that's just dense, and it's really dense, but just more so because of the perceived darkness. And so in the presence of my own darkness, like, how do I feel? Does that trigger me? You know, because this situation that I'm looking at right now, it's like I am having to also account for my darkness, which might be new to some of you. Like for me, maybe it's like it feels a little more new, because I think like my darkness and like the polarities and my shadow, or what isn't seen, a lot of that stuff, the things that I keep in my energetic and spiritual attic, are a lot of times the things that I want to like spare people from seeing. Like, it's also like there's an act of like self-sacrifice in what I do all the time, because there's so much of my experience that I always choose to keep in my moon energy, my divine feminine. That's why my divine feminine is always like, damn, bitch, like, you always put this trauma shit on me, bro. Like, you always keep it in the dark because you swear you don't want to do anybody the disservice of putting it all in the light. But then I asked, like, if acceptance, balance, service, and gratitude are the pillars of my life at this point, can I really have acceptance if I'm still subscribing to a role or giving myself this role that says I need to do or serve in a certain way? You know, maybe we should try this angle. I don't know what's better, but I think it's just also like the pollen in the air and also just, but yeah. Yeah, you know what I mean? So I think when I'm asking myself to really evaluate how I went through the last cycle, like, we're really getting an opportunity to ask like a different type of question, which is fundamentally we can shift what's in the attic and what's in the house. Like, I'm seeing that energy. Like, there's gonna, like, people are going to dwell in different parts of their home. Like, the dwelling is being shifted, you know? So, all things considered, like, in the presence of darkness, in the presence of my own darkness, is there a response? Like, am I aware that I'm only consciously perceiving this now because of my attention to it, but it always is, you know? So why does that reverberate as a change in my behavior? Why am I choosing that, you know? Why am I designing that? I think, like, it's just going back to that intentionality, like, how, like, finally we, like, comb through a scalp, you know, how we track paths, make symbolism, you know. It's all really ritualistic, you know what I mean? So, yeah, I mean, it's really like love and light, because at this point, what we're choosing to broadcast, like, I also have to, like, remember that, like, this is what this energy is also choosing to share and contribute at this time, regardless of, like, what it is. And so there's a level of that at this point you can't unsee, in the sense of, like, we're all really choosing to show up in the ways that we're showing up. It can't be, what we can't say isn't happening is that people aren't thinking about what they're doing, because people are taking the time they need and they're arriving at conclusions. So if they're arriving at conclusions that confuse you or surprise you or make you, like, completely change your perception of what's going on, like, at the end of the day, like, you know, do you and go through whatever karma you need to go through. But if I could tell you one thing, it's like there's still an inherent choice in that. Like, it's not like this choice is really all that much of something that it went through their oversight. And yes, there is the possibility that maybe they're still, like, being really dishonest, or maybe you're still being really dishonest about what you really, really want, and feeling like, because some people, like, it wasn't okay for you to want what you want. Like, are you gonna be really upset at, like, you know, the things that are meant for you for not embracing you fully, because they weren't taught to go after what they really desired? We were taught to go after the system, the matrix. They were taught to go after whatever. So we all have that from JIT. Like, we all know, like, where that was programmed into us. And so I find myself needing to extend gratitude and grace towards that experience, because I know it very intimately, but also, like, can't be too surprised when you see that people don't know how to identify, like, themselves in the world around them, that they can't see who they are, where they are. So then we, like, you know, end up with this, like, oversaturation and almost everything. Like, I think right now it is very radical what's happening with my diet or my perspective and relationship to the living organisms of this planet, or the call to action, the mending and healing of past harm that I've done even in this life, like, and contributing to the detriment of something else. So for all the years that I was doing this or behaving in one way, or like whatever, like it's really like all of that doesn't end, it just has a follow-up and an evolution. So there's a lot more management. So consciousness also comes with being lighter, because you're physically like, okay, if I'm committing to this, I'm gonna have to like keep up with this in all aspects. And so I feel like, yeah, it's like one of those things where, you know, because you're really realizing like how much work you're actually doing, whether you were conscious of it or not, like this is the work you're doing. And I think when you get to that place, it's like consciously you're gonna think a little bit more than maybe you would have previously without that, about why you're doing what you're doing, you know. And so the good news is it's all rainbows and sunshine and cottontails. The good thing is part of the preparation of this last little bit of this cycle was because you really wanted to feel in your body when it came in. When the story really started unfolding, you wanted to feel like you remember all of it and you were in control of like what you were intending to design. You know, you were in control of the variables that you needed to like create the design that you really wanted in regards to your human experience. And now is that arrival, now is that unfolding point where it's like finally happening. But you know, you see why it took the full range of time that it took for it to kind of transpire, because I mean, there was so many moving parts, and so much of you just like wants to look back and see genuinely like what it is, you know, what I am. And it's from all angles, you know what I mean? I'm looking through the veil of the eye, but that's also just one perspective amongst like what I'm being perceived at two-dimensionally on the screen. Or, you know, I mean, there's what I feel like in my body, you know what I mean, like the actual health. I mean, it's just so many different things. So I feel like auditing has allowed me to find a relative range of what I feel like I can stomach as an honest expression. And I think in every moment I am striving now, which I think this journey and this energy revisiting and some of these cycles like closing out, and the lesson and the wisdom that I'm extracting is that like every ounce of this really mattered for me, because I can finally say that I was sent on a healing journey where I just went away quietly and just decided to do what needed to be done. And I'm a more warming and visceral expression in as a whole. Like it's so much better to live in a space where all like work is really being done. The work that, you know, this postmodern world really like designs for us to not acknowledge, to remain in the dark, in the shadow of. And I think that, like I told you, this shifting from, like, if you have, I'm seeing a long desk and there's a lamp on the desk and there's the immediate light around it, and then the other end of the desk is dark because there's no light source. And I'm seeing that, like, you could put a single potato chip in the light, and you could put a paper clip in the dark, and then you could put like 2 quarters in the light, and then you could put a tissue in the shadow. And it's almost like for our entire soul's existence, what we have fundamentally had placed in our light space and in our dark space was one way, and is now being switched out, audited, moved. New things are being introduced. So what we understand about light and dark is gonna come into proper context, because you're going to see things like maybe certain things were always in the dark for you, like that's shadow energy, and the things that you put there, like maybe like certain expanded spiritual practices have always been taught or have been shadow, or certain preferences or certain lifestyle choices have always been shadow energy. Well, now that gets moved maybe into a light space where it's in your light, as in it's above the table, as in it's something that's on the plate for you. And I'm just feeling like that level of awareness, that level of finite, like, this is what it is now, so now how are you acting, you know what I mean? Like, if we were some observed species being observed, like, they're like introducing a new element, and it's like, now what? Like, what does a bull do when it sees the color blue? I don't know, you know what I mean? Like, how do we, it's just a different level of experimentation, you know? So yeah, so that's kind of what I'm getting right now, and I feel like it's gonna bring the poles, it's gonna connect the poles, and it's gonna round out, and it's gonna make this sphere, because right, Earth goes in one direction until it like circles back, right? So there's a certain like electromagnetic field that's shaped, like, you've seen the like Earth cut into like spheres and slices. Anyways, we could talk about it, but yeah, like, there's a relative range of how I want to like really be in control of it, because I also really feel like, yeah, that was the thing, like, I didn't really feel like I was in control of like what I was doing. Like, I was always walking around saying, like, I knew from a very, very young age, like, I'm going to be a public speaker, or I'm going to be, you know, I always knew, like, I was really interested in language, but then, or not even language, but like in communication. But then there's this part of me that observes the natural, like, well, if you're so invested in this, like, you don't, there's so many things you don't, that you are so small-minded about. Like, how come you don't know 10 languages if you really want to like deepen communication, like, you know what I mean, or get an understanding for how that's translates? Or how come you don't, you know, yeah, or like certain fields, it's a whole thing, right? And so I think like before it was like happening, it was my energy, and I was more watching it. And now I feel like, all right, here are the keys to your new Benz, because it's time for you to get in and start driving now. Like, you know, like, the Tesla doesn't need to drive you around anymore. You're not just like seeing how the car drives, like, you can now be in that. And there's so many things and so many places I think I want to go now that I have that awareness, that perhaps I was always walking the same path. Like, you can see traces of the lineage at different points, you know what I mean? You can see the history at different points. But I feel like at the same time, I think what's more valuable is not about tearing apart like what I was and how I used to feel like I had to show up, but it's more about the awareness and the understanding and compassion for the fact that now I know. Now I know who I am. Now I know what I'm creating, and I feel connected to it. Like, the creator has to have a relationship with its creation. And if the creation falls under the illusion of separation, like the turmoil that's felt, right? Like the out-of-body experience. So creation is now choosing to connect back to itself, right? The electromagnetic field is healing. We've been grounding down the light for ever, and I feel like so grateful that collectively enough of you have prioritized the need to acknowledge the oneness, the bigness that it is, the silver lining, the gold thread. Like, I mean, it's so present, and I so can't be bothered by things that feel in the body very wrong. Like, this is spirit protecting me right now to give the message to step into the power to assume this sort of coronation, to myself, to my own energy. I finally feel like I've been crowned with my own understanding of myself, and that's going to make me a much more aware and useful member of this planet, and that's just what it's going to be. And I'm giving love and light to all people because I really wanted everyone to be a part of this journey, and in a lot of ways so many people, places, and things still are, but I also know that like I couldn't really take much with me, and there wasn't too many other energies with me, like choosing to walk the path. So this is all like so beautiful. It's like 25 minutes in and I feel like I've found my rhythm and my pacing, and I'm hoping that these words land so softly on your heart space, because I feel how much it's so amazing to finally be here and to exude this attractive auric field, because I'm so in love with the design, and we're all so lucky that we're gonna get to live it out, that we got to build it and now we're gonna live it out. And I'm really, really satisfied with what I designed, and I'm excited because it inspires me when you feel like you really got it right, because it was worth it, because you were the anyways, but you are the ever-changing blueprint. You have the capacity to expand into anything. And then that's when I saw that flowering is underneath, right? And this is kind of how I feel right now. Like, this is how I feel like I'm channeling right now. Like, I hope that, yeah, control and reverse. You see what I mean? That's the energy right now. It's like, I'm choosing to embody this. Like, I don't want to be seen for in this moment. Like, it matters more to me to be seen, not for the ways that I don't have control, because I never really had it. But I'd rather be seen for how I've flowered. I'd rather be seen for how I've developed and documented that as best as I could. You know what I mean? Like, if I'm being very fair, it's been like really real. So it is what it is. I'm practicing moments of also like extending love. Like, it's happening in like a moment to moment kind of thing, where it's like I'll have a thought and I'll become self-conscious, and I'll start to think like, you know, about the perception of what I'm giving, and I finally feel like I have a response for that catalyst happening whenever it pops up, which I didn't feel like I used to have. And my response is in love and light. Well, the best thing to at least do is to just be honest about who you are, because in that way their response may never be one thing. It may never be what you really think and want it to be, but you can at least be consistent to yourself by guaranteeing that regardless. Like, I mean, I guess it's just best though to be honest. Like, if I ever feel self-conscious now, or if I ever start to overanalyze myself, or if I ever start to really like make this disingenuous because I'm like really fixated on the modality of this camera capturing what this at all, like, which I know is like translated probably through like some of the ways I've been fidgeting and throughout this video, but I feel like it's important to address this. Like, it's always going to be, it's just really important to me that that integrity really translates, and that in this moment what's more important is like having a more like yogi perspective, as in like there is an inherent self, there's a level of pride that you take and that you develop in being concerned with the posture of how you're approaching everything. And in this context I'm talking about my mind body, right? Like, so what is my posture towards my mental capacities right now? What is my posture towards my thoughts? And now that I'm starting to like track that, and I'm taking pride in the development and the progression of that, it doesn't need to turn into anything particular. It just needs to be developing, you know? Like, I just want everyone to be able to check back in and to know that there have been developments, that things have changed, that, like, you know, I think I can't really identify too much as a failure in life, because if you're still here, it's still changing. But the only time that I really think I notably see disappointments is when I know that like certain things or certain people just have like really not developed anything, you know? And it's very almost like, wow, we can see how much you were holding on to that control, and it would directly affect the relationship to your flowering, because these two are tethered in this position. So if one turns, so if you want to be in control, then you're delaying this flowering. But if you are concerned with blossoming where you are, embodying and embracing like what it is for you in this moment, like it will be obvious that you don't desire control, and that tug of war at least ceases to end, you know, because there's not something else meeting it or carrying it or holding it. So I'm going to finally read this passage 30 minutes later. Anyways, let's go back. Full of trust, out of the darkness of the forest into the rainbow of the light, we go step by step, drawn by our sense of wonder into the unknown. Adventure really has nothing to do with plans and maps and programs and organization. Ooh, like I think we really need to hear that, you know. The page of rainbows represents a quality that can come to us anywhere, at home or in the office, in the wilderness or in the city, in a creative project, or in our relationships with others. Whenever we move into the new and unknown with the trusting spirit of a child, innocent and open and vulnerable, even the smallest things of life can become the greatest adventures. And I think that that's what I've been noticing. Like, I'll have to be honest, like, since I've really been fully committing to this, like, vulnerability and this, like, light and dark on the table, you know what I mean? Like, acquainted, like, we know the absence of the light, we feel that, certainly, but we also know the presence of the darkness, right? So when we're bringing both of that to a situation, you're realizing, like, the smallest things, like going to the grocery store now, can have, like, these punches of, like, it's an adventure. And this is where we start to see the term, like, life is short sort of diminish, because it's only short because we're sleeping through so much of it, right? By passing up the details and the magic, because we choose to not acknowledge that in our development of our children, we raise them on the principles that they don't have souls, or that they don't really exist on a spiritual plane, and not just in a religious context. And certainly, like, many of our children are indoctrinated with religious contexts, ideologies, and like practices, but connection to source, connection to the understanding and the spirit of all things, the spirit of, you know, our home, the spirit of our animals, the spirit of the animal kingdom, the spirit of the mineral kingdom, the spirit of the elements, you know, the spirit of our car, you know, like all of these things. Like, we really have to understand, like, the lifespan, and so to me, life has always been perceived as short because you're just like counting the days. But when I'd rather live a life where me going to the grocery store evokes all of this experience, and regardless of its polarity and how that manifests, it's all of this experience that's populating. And I think that's really, like, the point of all of us being here at this time, you know, and sharing this space, which is to just acknowledge that you either want to be here for a good time and a long time, which would just involve you activating into the adventure of every opportune moment, or life is short, you know, and you're just squeezing it all in until you can't squeeze it in, and you always feel like you didn't do enough. Rather, for me, I'm like, there are so many adventures. I need, like, things to slow down. I'm so excited for this Taurus season, because Aries season was mondo fast, like super fast. When we started this astrological year, it was like just like, as in, like, the changes are like chopping straight up, you know what I mean? So Taurus season will give me a lot of the times, I'm like, wow, there's so many adventures to take in right now. Like, I need a moment to just recenter, reconnect, and just, like, be okay. Zen says truth has nothing to do with the authority. Truth has nothing to do with tradition. Truth has nothing to do with your past, with the past. Truth is a radical, personal realization. You have come to it. Oh my God, I forgot I have an iced beverage. You have come to it. That is what we needed to hear. Because I used to think I needed all these other people, these things, in order to get this point, you know, which is the truth of me. Who am I really, though? You know, Spirit, like, who am I really, though? Am I what I think I am? Am I what other people think I am? What's the vibe, you know? Really, I'm about to like try to put my hair up with quite literally no hairband because I'm innovative. You know? So that's kind of just like how I've been feeling. I'm like, I wanted to know that I could get to my personal truth, and my karmics, everything, my past soul ties tried to get me to believe that I needed them to get to this moment of adventure. This moment where it's like, no matter what I'm doing, no matter where I'm at, it all feels like I'm going on a journey and I'm activated in my life. And I've been so focused on like the coming so abruptly out of hermit mode, like after we were doing a lot of restructuring and things, and feeling like, whoa, like this is too much and so much is happening to me, and I keep using that as an excuse, but like I'm clearly like living on a life that's like on some sort of adventure. And I feel like in a odd way some people really envy the activation, the way that I'm able to care, the way that like something's changing for me, because I also feel like the people who have not really taken this opportunity are seeing that what isn't really changing for them is that movement and progression towards that internal Ace of Swords, right? That truth. That the Ace of Swords is like one of the best cards in the world because it's your spiritual truth. It's you are being affirmed by spirit. What your understanding of yourself has been gifted to you. So here you go. So here's how you can understand yourself. Like that is being on the lotus flower. That is flowering. That is Buddha. That is Zen. Like it is really Christ consciousness. It's crystalline consciousness, and it's so exciting to finally be here because I feel like at this moment, even my ops, even like, you know, and it's not even like my ops, like it's like, but even the people that, you know, could have been a part of the journey, would have been a part of the journey, whatever, it's like at the end of the day, like I didn't choose to like lose understanding that I also have somewhere to be though, you know, like it wasn't just about us, like I have somewhere to be. And I feel like there's a lot of people from my past that don't realize that it can't be on me, that you didn't uphold the part of this that was just about you needing to and having a desire to want to go arrive somewhere else. You know what I mean? Some of us were waiting around so long for just the justice to come in with like other people, other things, other jobs, other situations, and it's like, oh goodness, like the beautiful thing about right now for me is that like, yes, while my job feelings about my space are what they are and they're just gonna be what they are, like I also realize like I'm grateful because like I am also someone that is never gonna compromise on the fact that I always have something for me going, so that I know that I can seamlessly transition. And that is something that I can honestly acknowledge and affirm I don't have to be in fear of during this big transition, you know, is that like when I went through this death cycle, like I have new beginnings that we're all honestly waiting for certain things to close and end so that they can just have all of me. And I want that. I want to invite that in. I want to match up my cycles. I want to start new jobs when I feel this energy, so it's not residual old energy filtering and shifting perspective about like what we think is happening for us, because we are carrying stuff that we don't need to carry anymore to make conclusions and use information and extract and derive wisdom and meaning from things that we don't even have to be doing that and acknowledging that. So for me right now, like I know, like congratulations collective, because if you feel this, you feel how this Ace of Sword, like honestly, like the thing that you get is that Zen state, like you know you, so you're not bound to anybody, anything at all, because you know what you need to be, you know what you need to be successfully in this expression. So you have that key now. So what you have that nobody else has, and that none of the karmics and none of the anything can make you try to think you need, is you see that you don't even need them. So whether you rectify or don't rectify, whether you stay in the job or don't stay in the job, like the truth is that like when you know that you don't need that thing to go on to do what get your Ace of Swords, how does your perspective change? When you know you don't need it anymore, would you still be around? And I feel collective really going through that, you know what I mean? It says, knowledge is certain. The search for personal knowing is very, very hazardous. Nobody can guarantee it. If you ask me if I can guarantee anything, I say I cannot guarantee you anything. I can only guarantee danger. That much is certain. I can only guarantee you a long adventure with every possibility of going astray and never reaching the goal. But one thing is certain. The very search will help you grow. I can guarantee only growth. This is medicine from my Creator to me right now, because I'm taking this step and Spirit is saying, I can only guarantee you that there's going to be falls. I can only guarantee you that there's going to be this. But what I also can tell you for certain is that by just doing it, I'm better. Some of us are looking at situations where it's like, by just the sole act of being vulnerable, taking this opportunity, just trying it, is better than where you are, what you've already completed, what you've already graduated. It's better, like, bro, going and if you had no plans outside of, I don't know, I'm using as an example, like say you were a high schooler and you had no plans outside high school, but just getting out and going is going to be better than maybe what you've already completed and been done with in primary school, you know what I mean? So now that you've got, like, it's like that level of possibility. And Spirit is telling me, I can only promise you danger. I can only promise you that it might be hazardous. But the very search for what is you will only help me to grow, because I have answers that I need. I can guarantee only growth. Danger will be there. Sacrifice will be there. You will be moving every day into the unknown, into the uncharted. And there will be no map to follow, no guide to follow. Yes, there are millions of dangers and you can go astray and you can get lost, but that is the only way that one grows. It's like simple. It's like, well, if growth is the point of life and the only way to grow is to chart the unknown, chart what isn't currently in your possession, what isn't currently available. You have to include your shadow. You have to incorporate it. That's what a lot of us are feeling. I don't want the danger. Well, you have to. Because your dark, the womb, the void, the absence of things, the empty space is where is the only place you can go to create something what new. So all of y'all are going to the divine saying, divine, I want my new light. I want my new start. I want my new start. Okay, so when you wanted to come into this planet, what did you have to go find? An open womb. You had to go crawl up in your mama's womb one time. That's the only place where you can be birthed. You can't be birthed into stuff. You can't be born into matter. You have to be born into nothingness to bring matter into form. So you have to go into the dark. You have to go into the shadow, right? Don't you think it's pretty funny and karmic and ironic that Spirit's like, oh, you want to bring a baby into this world? Which we all objectively, like, respect. Like, if somebody's like, oh, that's my kid, it's just like, respect, that's your kid, right? Regardless of, like, who they are. If someone's a parent, they're a parent, right? But what's the other part that we can't keep denying anymore? That people have sex in order to have children. And as I'm getting older, I'm like, oh, that's the taboo part of it, that y'all were like in the bedroom going brazy on them because you have a family of 6. You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of this, the light and the shadow. Like, you had to go through the dark portal of the taboo, the 8th house, right? Scorpio. You had to go through that tunnel in order to create, right? This new understanding. And some of us need to hear that medicine, but regardless, like, I feel like for you guys who are like me, who like really were in the trenches, just feeling how much of my own shadow is just out in ways that I just like really could have done without, just know, like, that is you. The danger Spirit's talking about is not perceived danger. It's a danger you can cause yourself, right? By your own, it's your own shadow. Spirit, this is not scary. The shadows of the world are just projections of the shadow you walk with. Right? So it's just you. It's just you. There's nothing to be freaked out about. But there is fear. There is unknown because the shadow, the lights are off. You can't see. Meaning you can't project in the shadow. In the divine feminine, you can't project any image into it. Because you can't even see. To use your eyes to filter that, you couldn't even project an image from the mind space. That's why the divine feminine is the creator, the dark space, the negative space, the womb, the darkness, the polarity. It gets created there and brought to the light. It gets created there. You create the flame from the darkness, and the flame can then strengthen its journey out of the darkness, strengthens it to now be in the light, fully burning. Bow. That's what's happening right now. Insecurity is the only way to grow. Woo! I'm talking about facing housing insecurity. We're going on, I don't know how many months now, right? But it's the only way to grow, because when I look back, and I'm the person that's like, oh, we live in this massive property now. Like, oh yeah, things are really different now. I'm going to go back and look at this period of time and say that was the beanstalk moment. It was the moment where it just, wow, Jack and Beanstalk. That was such a, I just saw a butterfly to confirm that. My inner child really loved that tale. To face danger is the only way to grow. To accept the challenge of the unknown is the only way to go, because in every beginning, all dimensions of self are present. And the challenge is representative of the shadow. 46 I just saw. It's representative of our hidden self, our secret self, our private self, our internal self, our emotional self. So that also has to be a part of this. So don't be afraid if you were someone where the shadow in the past cycle was able to just stay in the attic. Well, now that the dwelling is shifting right in your home, in your temple, in your house, we're living on like a different floor of the house. We're living in a different wing of the home. And so with that, we're at the 47 minute. That's where I'm going to go because I have to pee really bad. But that's the message. Congratulations. It's lit.